Hello, everyone. This is Arcacia with Apache Homeschoolers, and we're here tonight to do another family spotlight. This is our March family spotlight. And as a reminder, if you guys are interested in being a family spotlight interviewee, you can contact Apache through Facebook or email, and we would love to chat with you guys and sit down and find out about your homeschooling journey. Well, tonight we have Cher and Steve. They're joining us, and they're going to let us in on their homeschooling journey and what that has looked like so far. So Cher and Steve, why don't you guys introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your family?
Hi, I'm Steve, and this is my wife, Sherilyn. We are a family of 7. We have an 18-year-old and all the way down to a 9-year-old. 4 of the oldest are girls, and the youngest one is our little man. And what else is there about our family?
Well, our family started in England when we were over there with Caterpillar, and our first baby we actually adopted from Kazakhstan while we were living in England. And so she came to us when she was 9 months old, and then about 9 months later we gave birth to Lainey, the second child, in England. And and then the rest were born in Illinois.
Well, that's interesting that you guys started in England. I've actually haven't talked to somebody yet who started and lived overseas. So this is kind of cool that we're talking to you about that. So how did you guys start your homeschooling journey, and when did it start, and kind of give us the precepts of how it started there?
I have my point of view, and I don't know what you'll say, but I had families in my life that I looked up to for like parenting, being a mom, things, my support. And when we started thinking about school stuff, it was like, I realized that like the families that I really admired were actually homeschool families, that the family was closer and the siblings seemed closer. Having grown up in a home where I was well loved, but my parents had divorced, and it was me and my brother, and it was just different. And I just, the idea of a family really just being together and learning together seemed like it would be worth a try, maybe. And JC, our youngest, was 3 years old at that time when I brought up the idea of homeschooling. And do you remember what your response was when I said, can we just try homeschooling, like preschool or something? You remember?
No.
Why? And so, thankfully, little did we know that his brother's family, who has 4 boys, and their family's ahead of ours, like they're older. At the very same time, they jumped into homeschooling because their kids were always getting sick at school, getting in trouble for wanting to be more active in things. And they discovered that they could do at home during the day in the amount of time it takes for them to go to school all day plus do their homework at night. Like the time they took doing their schoolwork could be done during the day. And so they started it.
So that's nice that you guys kind of had partners kind of in crime, so to speak. It
was good for me anyway at that time. Things. But actually, we moved to Illinois from England, and it was at Apache that he suddenly became the hugest homeschool advocate. So we were living in Decatur at the time, and somehow I finagled him to please come with me just to look at things, see what it's like. He ended up at a Todd Wilson, who's coming again.
Oh, Todd Wilson, yep. He's going to be at our next, this upcoming convention.
Yeah,
we're really excited.
And I believe was a huge impact on him coming on board. I remember Todd Wilson was passing out some pins that said something like my wife homeschool. I don't even remember what they said on them.
Yeah,
But
those are some famous pins.
started kind of warming up to the idea. Do you remember going to the first conference at all?
I don't remember. I guess my recollection is a little bit different than hers. I grew up going to school in a boarding school.
In Africa.
I did homeschooling. I did public school. I was pretty much open to anything, I think. And maybe my initial expression to her was more of, are you sure you want to undertake that, as opposed to being opposed to it. So again, I think I'm open to all of that. And I think the environment we're in and the degradation of our school system has only amplified that over time. The need to give kids more time, more attention, and make sure it's quality time and quality attention, because the last, whatever it's been, 10, just since we've been homeschooling, it seems like that's, even the safety of the kids is a concern these days, not just the education of them.
Right. Well, it's interesting how you guys have different backgrounds with schooling, different family backgrounds, and then you guys kind of come together with the homeschooling. Your story is a little bit similar to me and my husband, the fact that we were not on board together with homeschooling. My husband told me that we were going to homeschool. It was not in my field at all. I was actually filling out the registration form for my oldest to be entered into kindergarten. And I told him what I was doing. And his response was, I thought we were going to homeschool. We had never had a conversation about it. Never had a conversation about it.
Kind of like I never knew all the thoughts behind his why.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that, my husband kind of got me on board, and then I kind of took it from there. But at the same time, he was just kind of like, okay, well, you're going to do the homeschooling. Not that he was leaving it all on my plate, but he was busy with work and stuff, and he just kind of took a back burner to it. But like you mentioned with Steve and going to an Apache convention, that's what got my husband on board, was an Apache convention. He actually went to an Apache convention, and he went to a man's only talk, and he caught the vision for homeschooling, and he's been an avid supporter of me since. And it's nice to be able to work together now and feel that support. Like I'm sure you two have found it's nice to have that support with each other when it comes to homeschooling.
And that's something that I know that sometimes this happens a lot, it seems, where one person catches the vision before the other.
Yes.
And I would just say to anyone listening that if it's on your heart about homeschooling, and your spouse isn't quite on board yet, just really be praying for them, and Lord willing, at the right time, if it's what you're supposed to do for your family, you'll come together in that vision.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Like, I didn't know he was as open as he's saying now. I recall I was more like really researching it, and just, it wasn't on my radar either, though. Let me tell you, until maybe my daughter was 3 or 4. I was going to put my kids in every activity everywhere, but God definitely called me. And then thankfully it was early on that we were able to come together, and we've been on the since.
God definitely changes hearts and works on our hearts and carries us through wherever we're at, which is nice too. And I definitely reiterate your statements about, if your spouse isn't on board with homeschooling yet, continue praying for them, because God can change their heart. I've seen it happen so many times. I've seen it happen in my own marriage with either my heart or my husband's heart. We've been disagreeing about different things, and then we come together because we have a change of heart, and God has worked on our hearts. So it's definitely some great stuff. So let me ask you guys, what has been your favorite, or what do you love most about homeschooling?
I guess this means I got to go first this time. I think for me, although Sherilyn's usually done a big mix of, her own stuff and different materials from different locations, but the biggest thing for me has been watching the kids help each other. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be the older helping the younger. You can see the younger ones helping the older ones as well.
Yeah.
Or the ones good in math helping the ones that aren't so good, and vice versa. The ones that are good in the science or in the arts helping the other ones. So it's really interesting that they also become teachers themselves and learn how to help. And some of the kids, and again, it goes to their personality, but some of the kids have a real gift and patience for that too. So it's really good to see that side of the school and the schooling and the whole learning aspect.
Definitely. The homeschooling really, it reiterates the character traits and teaching. And that's one of the things that I love about homeschooling is, teaching my kids the character traits, the patience, the goodness, the selflessness, because, when you're homeschooling, a lot of times you've got to be selfless, not selfish. Those are all some great qualities that I love teaching. Cheryl, what is your take on what do you love most about the homeschooling experience?
Well, I think it's that thing that I saw in those other families before I started homeschooling, that togetherness of the family, and just the siblings becoming best friends, and still go, we can also go out in the community and do things during the day. I mean, we can volunteer places, we can get other things done, and it can just be real life experiences together. Everything's like a learning possibility.
Right.
And thankfully we live in a state that so far is very open about homeschooling, and so that's been great.
I love that too. When it comes to
Yeah.
homeschooling and living life together, that's my favorite part too, is that we get to live life together. Too many times I see families that are just one person's going somewhere and the other person's going another, and the kids are going another direction. And I love the fact that we can just do everything together. If brother or sister has a game to go to or a music lesson to go to, we all go and we enjoy it. So it's really nice.
Yes, it's been a blessing for us. Also, as we've moved around quite a bit, and it's been very nice to not have to think about transferring from one school to another, and all that comes with that. It's been nice to be able to just continue, that homeschooling stays kind of a constant in their lives,
right,
wherever we. So it just really makes us closer, and just really helps with those life transitions, I think.
It's definitely nice having that constant, because sometimes the kids need stability too, and that's something that they can always rely on. Yes. Which is really nice too. So what does the typical homeschool day look like in your guys' family?
Well, it's varied through time. When we started, and this is, okay, so when we started, we only had one kid to teach that we were teaching. It was as our family expanded that things started to change, because the more kids you have, you start kind of reassessing what that looks like for your family. So in the beginning, it was the whole I don't know what to do thing. And so at that time, it was really nice to find a homeschool program that kind of just laid everything out for us. But like you said, since then we got our footing after the first few years, and you start to see what's working or what's not working for your family. So we're more, people would call eclectic homeschoolers, I guess, where we take a little bit of this and that. As the kids have gotten older, where we are presently is that we have a 14-year-old, 16-year-old, and 18-year-old in high school. And then we have a 7th grader and a 4th grader. One of our goals in homeschooling is that our children become independent learners. And right now that looks like, for our high schoolers, it's a lot of just supervision of things that we have them do, but also we found that dual enrollment, which is, if you don't know what dual enrollment is, it's when you do high school and also receive college credit and high school credit at the same time. We have found our children are looking toward college, so it's been helpful for us as financially. It's a tremendous savings, and then also it's kind of a weight off are back. We found a few Christian schools that do that. One is Laterno University in Longview, Texas, has been wonderful for getting some schoolwork done for high school, plus earning college credit. And also Liberty University has been good for us in that. So when I first started homeschooling, I was like, my kids will never be on computers, that whole, they'll never watch TV, right? But now, as they're getting older and looking to eventually leave the home, it's been a good thing for them, especially because we've had such a relaxed homeschool in their other years building up to that it's been good, at least starting them in 9th grade with either online classes with like the Potter School or somewhere, where they have assignments and teachers, so that when they get out, it's just worked nicely that way. So right now it's a hodgepodge of online and in person. I do more with my younger ones, but even they are fairly independent with a lot of the work they do. So we're in a good place right now. Not we had them all little and you're like, what do I do? How do I do all the homeschool things? How do I do all the boxes? And we put so much stress on ourselves.
Oh, how do you teach more than one grade at one time? I've had that question asked a lot too.
Yeah, I think for us, as we've been homeschooling, I ended up with some health things. I had to have several surgeries over a span of 10 years. And so the flexibility of homeschooling was nice at that time. They watched a lot of educational shows and, up with the 3 R's. And math is probably the most important thing, I think, to keep really, they each go at their own level with that. And so we did teach separate grades in that, going at their own pace. Until I found teaching textbooks, which does most of that for me, which has been such a blessing. But we started with Math UC, and we still do with the younger years. And so they're each in their own. But with other subjects like science, social studies, those other things where it's almost an unlimited learning experience of things you can learn. We just did a lot all together. And then you can just have your younger ones draw a picture or color when you're reading about something from social studies, something to do with it, and then the elementary kids, depending on where they're at with their writing, can just write one sentence and draw a picture, and the older they are, maybe they have to write a 1-page paper on it or something like this. So you just it becomes easy. I have found it easier to adjust that way for our family. And that's what's worked best for us.
Well, there's some great resources that you mentioned there, Cher, and I love some of those resources. Those are some of the resources I use. And you mentioned that you're an eclectic homeschooler. I think a lot of us end up as being eclectic homeschoolers. We start off, like you mentioned, because you're afraid you don't know what to teach them. You don't know if you're going to miss something. So you get that box curriculum set. And you go with that for a couple of years, and then you're like, you know what, I can do this subject a little bit better, a little bit differently for this child. So then you kind of branch out a little bit as you get some more experience underneath your belt. So definitely very similar stories that we have here.
And now since the pandemic, he's been working from home. So actually our son, he gets up and he comes in, he's taken over the school. We actually have a homeschool room on this move, which has been nice for us, but he's taking it over as his office. So, but anyway, my son does come in and do his math first thing, and he helps him out if he needs help. And, it's been nice to have him around to help the kids with complicated calculus or whatever somebody's doing that he's the math part of our homeschool. But so it's been nice to have all that teaching kind of together. And I think when you homeschool, you do think more about everything being a teaching opportunity.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Steve, my husband's also the math one too in our family. So
Yeah, so I think the other side of this too is it's homeschooling is in our perspective is not a 9-to-5 job. So it's a 24/7 thing. And of course, prior to this past year, I was going to work every day, so it didn't leave a lot of time during the day to help out or do things with the kids. And that's changed a little bit over the last year. But even prior to that, when I'd come home, I would look for, and it was kind of the way I was raised, I would look for opportunities to spend time with the kids. My wife likes to spend more of her time inside. I like to spend more of my time outside. And so it was an opportunity to continue that teaching and that learning. And where I could, of course, we live in the city, so it's not as easy anymore, but to explore God's great big creation. And I don't think my wife would be too interested in teaching them how to pick up grasshoppers or frogs or things like that. So
Well,
we go out and
definitely, yeah, life
explore the,
experiences are great. So yes, I definitely love that too. That, my husband does the same thing, and he's currently doing a wood shop class with my son. We have some friends that have started a homeschool wood shop class, and my husband has the luxury of being able to take one day off a week, and he takes my son to the wood shop class, and he loves spending that one-on-one time with them. In fact, our other son really wants to go to wood shop, but daddy has had to explain to him, no, this is me and Timothy's time. Me and you will have something else, but this is me and his time to do it. So I love the fact that we can cater to each child, and we can teach them those life experiences that a lot of times that they don't necessarily get in the school system. So definitely some good tips.
There's lots of other activities that can be done. I like to work around the house and work on the cars, and when I can engage the kids and teach them a little bit, they're pretty busy with school, so it's kind of hard to get their attention and pull it away from the book knowledge they're getting, but I'll take that opportunity. And then the other thing that's important, and again, I learned it at a young age, was I forget what it is, 7/10 of the world is covered with water, so you better learn to swim. So the first time I took the kids, it was to the Y, and we let the YMCA instructor take care of them, and it was one kid or two kids at the time when we started. Anyways, they were there with a group of 5, and the amount of time they got to spend in the water and learn something was so small because the instructor was busy looking after everybody else. So after that, I opted for the open swim, and I taught them myself. So I got 5 years, and I think all of them have been off the diving board, and I think half of them have dove off the diving board. So there's lots of things that you can teach them in life. And now I guess before that or during that, learned all of them are bike riders, and we've got 2 now that are driving. So there's a lot of activities that go on beyond the school realm that you can engage with the kids. And of course, during all that time, which is maybe more important from the educational standpoint, is communication, talking to the kids and understanding what interests them, what problems they may have, or what they like to talk about. So it's a case of there's too much out there, too many options, whether it's curriculum, courses, whatever. It's kind of like the typical public school scenario where it's after school, what do you participate in? And again, we try not to get too busy with that. We want to be selective so they can kind of become a little bit more specialized, but lots to teach. Lots
Lots of different opportunities for your kids in the homeschooling family. I love that. So you mentioned, talking to your kids and having great communication, especially when they're going through trials and difficulties and stuff. So what do you guys do when you're having a difficulty or a difficult time in your homeschooling? What is your guys' solution? I don't know if there's a good term to say solution, or how do you guys work through those difficulties?
Well, there was one child in particular that has kind of, a lot of times we've run into something in schooling that's like, what do I do? And so, I mean, the only person that knows her and what we could do is God. So I've spent a lot of time in my own room at times throughout the process, sometimes crying and eating. If you're a new homeschool mom, you've got to keep like your chocolate stash in the bathroom or somewhere in your room. You have your own little, in my closet, sometimes I'll have a coffee and a little snack in there. And when he sees me, I'm like, I'm in the conference room for the teachers, and you're welcome to come and join me if you want to. Like, I'm not hiding everything, but just really it's really increased my prayer life in a lot of ways, because there's a lot of neat books out there. There's a lot of neat curriculums, and sometimes it makes it look like it can be this cookie cutter thing for every family. And then you get stressed out because, like, why aren't we able to do all that? Well, it's because your kids are individuals. And so probably the most important thing, if someone going into homeschooling, is to be as flexible as possible with how things are going to go, because otherwise they're upset, you get upset, nobody's learning well. And so sometimes it's just take a break and then regroup. I mean, we did that with one of our kids is very art oriented and just really an English language oriented. But every time we would try to start math, her life was, suddenly everything was just, her life was over, everything came out, and I just couldn't anymore. And so we took a break, and actually Osborne Books has this book called This Is Not a Math Book. And it has art stuff in it and things like that. So when we took our break, that's what she did for math. We both needed a break from the subject for a while. And also I think it helps to think of school as a continuum. Like, we actually school year round and just take several breaks. That's helped us a lot with not always feeling like I have to get this done within 5 days, whatever time you yourself. And then also just teaching, like, for us, we've been called long-term to homeschooling, knowing that of course God can always move in different ways and show us something different. But I think for us, knowing we were called to it, we're able to have the perspective of, okay, so if everything in third grade doesn't get done in this third grade year, it's okay. When they're in fourth, fifth grade, it might be easier for them, and it'll come in their time. Right. And honestly, until they get to, especially if you're going toward college goals, that's, high school is more when, like, little bit of ending middle school and then starting high school is when you kind of have to focus more on, you got to get this done by a certain time and all of that. But we just especially enjoyed the years where we didn't have those things that we had to look at. And you know what, they all, by God's grace, have done well. And I mentioned calculus and that they're in college classes. And honestly, I can only say they got there by God's grace because we had to be so relaxed in our homeschooling for so many years. And it turns out when they're just eager to learn and you bring in a bunch of books from, like, the library, just check out a bunch of books, a bunch of subjects, they learn so much and together talk about it and do things. And it's just been such a blessing, this journey, and continues to be.
It definitely is. Do you have anything to add, Steve?
Yeah, the difficulties, I think, in two cases are two things that I think is really helpful to remember. Is one is it's a great opportunity to teach the kids about life. If they're struggling with a subject or struggling with whatever that struggle may be, maybe it's not related to school, maybe it's just where they are in that day or something. It's a great opportunity to teach them that that's part of life. And, we as adults, we go to work and we have the same struggles, and if they had a difficulty with their sibling, you can say, I had a difficulty at work with, one of the coworkers or something. So it's a good way to teach them that and use it as an opportunity to communicate that that's what this life is about. And we're here to learn and to deal with it. And then the other side that we got to keep reminding ourselves is, it seems like all that difficulty comes at the inopportune time. And we've got to remind ourselves that this is an opportunity that we can engage with our kids and spend time and, again, talk with them and communicate. So I think those are things that we really need to keep in mind, the big picture, that we're here. Well, that's what the role of the parent is teacher, right? To train the kids up. And again, it's a negative because you have to deal with that difficulty, but it's an opportunity because you get to engage with your kids and teach them about life.
Yeah, those opportunities, those difficulties are great opportunities because, as an adult, not everything goes okay. And you do have struggles and you do have times that, things aren't right. And teaching our children how to deal with those and how to handle those situations are definitely great opportunities. And I like how you mentioned also relying on God's grace and prayer. That is so important as parents and as teachers of our kids that, when things are tough or when things are difficult and we're struggling with our kids and we're ready to pull our hair out and our kids are in tears over something, that is so good to go to God's feet and just pray over the situation. And those are just some great opportunities too.
And they're
So in closing,
normal. So
yes,
they're normal things in a homeschool. 'Cause I think too much we have this picture of the closeness in a family. And right now where we're sitting, when we don't have kids that are potty training anymore and all of this, it's easy to look back on the good times,
right,
it's a much warmer feeling than sometimes when you're in the trenches of that time. Like, that is normal and that's normal life, and you will get through it, and you'll get through it easier if you realize, okay, I'm not in control. Like, we can plan things out, but we're not in control. God's in control, and he
right.
puts allows circumstances in our lives each day, even during homeschool, that can feel frustrating, but maybe that's actually what we're supposed to be working on today instead of what we had planned out. So
Definitely growing opportunities. So in closing here, when we're talking to new homeschoolers, because a lot of new homeschoolers watch these videos too, what kind of encouragement would you give to those homeschoolers that are just starting out in their homeschooling journey?
Well, I think one of the biggest things for me has thankfully been homeschool groups like Apache. We're really blessed to live in a time, even before COVID hit, just seeing how far acceptance of homeschooling has come since we started 15 years ago, where people would be like, you what? And it was just like super weird and crazy. And then Peoria about 5 years ago, wow, we couldn't believe all the businesses and people who like have homeschooling things set up, and it's just really nice. So I would say, if you can get involved, even if your kids are little, maybe do some play groups with other homeschoolers, to feel that encouragement, because there still will be family members or friends who are like, they're not understanding what you're doing. So like, I would say, if you're called to it, like, and God's calling you to it, he's the one that we need to be pleasing for this. And so even if other people are understanding of it, we're held most accountable to God for our children. Like, if there's well-meaning family members, I mean, that's kind of like, we had some well-meaning family members that, especially at the beginning of our homeschool journey, were like, well, what about labs? How are you going to be able to do that? And what about all these things? And so finally, I think the one thing that helped, especially with family members that are Christian, is, thank you for your concern for our children. We also research and pray about these things, and we're held more accountable than anybody for our children before God. And this is where, we are called right now. And then the other thing is, be as flexible as possible because of the unexpected. And if you do start with a all-in-one curriculum, usually they have these beautiful schedules where you do math at this time and science at this time and all of these things. And often it's like, okay, you plan your day with your kids, right? Like, or your child, if you're just homeschooling one, but it can be easier to just like get up at this time, do your chores at this time, do your lunch at this time. My homeschool never was able to stay in those parameters. So what really de-stressed us was having more of a routine, this strict schedule.
Yeah.
First we're going to have breakfast and then we're going to do this, but sometimes it might last a little longer or shorter. And then it's like, it's a little less stressful because you're like, not yelling like we're already behind, because, and that's just not
Right.
good for anybody in the homeschool. And go to conferences, go to Apache. Like there's a lot online, but it's just not the same as going in person. I remember when we first went to our homeschooling conferences, when homeschooling was super weird. It was just so nice to step into a place where everybody was like, they had the same calling at that time.
Mhm. Homeschooling was normal.
Yeah, and you get to talk to other people in person. And I know that we're considered old compared to a lot of the newer homeschoolers with their younger children, but a conference is a good time to ask questions to
Yeah.
people like us. I'll be at the teaching textbooks table this year, representing them, because they've worked so well for us, and they asked if they needed someone to represent there. But I'm happy to also talk with parents who are considering homeschooling or going through something. I may not have all the answers, but I do enjoy talking with others,
Mhm.
and encouraging them where possible in their homeschool journey. And there's lots of other people like you and other people that come to these conferences that want to be
To get that
support to-
encouragement. Yes, definitely. So Steve, do you have anything to add for encouragement from the dad perspective?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because in the last year, things have changed, with the work from home and no school. It seems like a lot more people are open to that. And when the subject comes up, what are you doing with your kids? It's an easy answer. We're homeschooling, we're doing nothing different, right? So they're not so much resistant to the idea, and they're kind of jealous because we've already got it figured out. So it's kind of a new way into that. But even prior to that, I think there's basically two groups of people. There's a group of people that really want to engage with their kids, their family, and do the best for them. And then there's others, let's be honest, that they're gonna give them up to the public school system, and that's what they're there for. That's what I pay taxes for. And I don't know if you're really gonna sell them on homeschooling, because it does take work, it does take commitment, and as you mentioned in one of the questions, there are difficulties. When you have problems that arise, you have to deal with them yourself. You can't leave it to the teacher or the school system.
Right.
But the big thing that I think that encourages me, and I think most of us are that way, we like to make our own decisions. We like to have control of our own destiny and what happens to us, and maybe to a fault, because we often go away from what God wants us to do. But if you really want to control the destiny of your kids and grow them, there's no better way than to do it with homeschooling, because you're the ultimate person in control. And the biggest thing I see, and it kind of goes beyond homeschooling and gets into the shepherding mode, but it's so easy, so much easier to direct your kids, teach your kids, educate your kids, if they don't have that ongoing influence that's from the world. And again, some people see that as a negative. I think it's a big positive. And if you want to see the kids do what you say, then engage with them and teach them every day.
Definitely. Home discipleship. I mean, that's one of Apache's little mottos, is that, homeschooling comes under home discipleship. And we really strongly believe in home discipleship. And it's a great opportunity to disciple our kids in a homeschooling atmosphere. So definitely. Thanks, guys, for talking to us, Cher and Steve. It was really great to sit down with you guys and get a little bit of an idea of what your guys' homeschooling journey has been up till this point. And we really appreciate those thoughts and those encouragements. Again, this is the March Apache Family Spotlight. And if you would like to be an Apache Spotlight family, please give us a call. You can email us, you can Facebook message us, and let us know. And we'd be happy to sit down with you, just like we did with Cher and Steve tonight, and get a little idea of what your journey is like. So thanks again, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.